3, 2, 1, go. Okay, so this is... Thank you. This is Lord of the Sword. It's an RPG on the Sega Master System, made in, I think, 1988, so it's quite an old one. As you're looking at it right now, you're probably thinking, oh yeah, it's Zelda 2, basically, but well, it's not. It's quite different. So technically it is like an RPG, but it barely has any RPG elements, so it's more of like a platformer and a try-not-to-die exploration game. So it looks like left to right just for now, but there's a lot of exploration in terms of like what maps you can go to and like just different places you can go to in the game. You have to talk to a bunch of NPCs and figure out where to go, beat certain bosses and so on. So yeah, this game, yeah, I have a pretty long history with it. I've played it for like a really long time, and I had it ever since like I grew up as a kid, so I'm really nostalgic about it. But what I've found in just talking to people is that basically no one else knows this game exists. So, yeah. So, I'd be curious to know if anyone actually has played this game before here. I know of maybe like 2 or 3 other people who have, apart from like me and my brother, basically. Alright, so basically what I'm doing now is I talk to that wizard there. You have to actually talk to him and he gives you this book. We don't need the book, but we do need to talk to the wizard because he sets up some flags for later. Basically what we're going to be doing is going to the right maps, talking to the right people so that we can actually progress through the game. And yeah, so the main premise of what I'm trying to do here is basically just not die. So my health bar is at the top of the screen. As you can see, I've got like maybe 70% health or something like that. And I got to get really far without dying. So a lot of my strats are basically just working around trying to conserve my health while trying to get boosted forward by enemies like this bird here. And just getting hit by the enemies that don't take a lot of damage. So those are the real keys there. So like I can get hit by that snake because it barely takes anything, but I won't get hit by the skeleton further on in this map because it takes heaps of damage. Or that eyeball there takes quite a bit as well. So by going through this forest and talking to our first kind of real main point of this game, there's this tree there that's going to tell us that there's another tree somewhere else that we have to beat. So this is the good tree and it's going to tell us where the bad tree is, basically. But coming up is the first real glitch of the run. So I'm going to talk to this tree. And you're probably thinking like, well, I just walked a really, really long way to get to where I was. Now, if I reset and I hit continue right now, it's going to put me back in that map where the tree was, basically. But if I wait for the demo of the game to play, it will save the map that the demo was on as the map that I was on. So there's the demo. And if I start, I'm on the demo map. So I've just warped across the entire world there, just thanks to the demo overriding that value. So where I'm now is basically where I started from. So you can imagine how long I took to walk to that tree. I would have had to walk all the way back if I didn't use that demo glitch. There are a few things going on with that demo glitch. It works a little bit differently on the Japanese version. On the Japanese version, you just go back to the last town rather than the map you were just on, so the demo glitch doesn't actually work. But it turns out the US version, which I'm playing on now, is the fastest version. And that's byte for byte the same as the Australian version, but the Australian console runs slower, so I'm playing on the US console as well. Another glitch coming up is something called the pause glitch. You can't pause on these maps. Like, if I press the pause button right now, it won't do anything. But you can pause in towns. And what happens is if you pause as you exit a town, then some funky things start to happen. Like this, and I'm already across the map. So, what basically happens if you pause in a town is it tries to put you at the center of the screen. And so it basically says, well, let's look at what X coordinate I've got to put you at. Towns are fairly small, so it's usually a pretty low X coordinate. Whatever the X coordinate of the center of the screen would have been. And on that map that I was going to, that I unpaused on, that X coordinate is really far to the left. So on that map that I was on, I was going to have to walk right to left, but I basically skipped that whole thing. And yeah, so that pause glitch is really useful, especially if you're going right to left. Not so much if you're going left to right, but I still go for it if I'm going left to right. And that goblin that hit me there just stole that book from me. That's supposed to be really bad, but it turns out you actually don't need the book at all. So yeah, it doesn't really matter. So this map is a little bit scary because you can see I'm on very low health right now, but I planned it out exactly so that I can get to this town and hopefully not die. And as you saw, I paused when I entered this town for a little bit. That pause was just to get me to the center of the screen. That actually saves 40 frames, and this game runs at 60 frames a second, so not much time at all, but you might as well do it. Alright, so this dude's telling me those woods are haunted by fearsome tree spirits, so as you would expect, I'm going to go straight into those woods. And as you can see, that staircase there is an example of the map branching off, so that gives you a sense of exploration in the game. And important to note is those pause glitches that I'm doing, like what I did as I was leaving that town. Every one of those is frame perfect, so you only have 1/60th of a second to hit that pause button. Usually you would just walk off the edge of the town map, but I use a jump to time it, because the screen won't transition until you land from your jump. So rather than trying to use a left-right visual reference, I use a jump, and like when I'm about to land is when I pause. So here's the first boss of this game. Very difficult. Definitely no cheap tricks here at all. And I'm just going to reset to get back to the start of these woods. So that reset saved like a little bit of time, but not as much as one that would use a demo glitch. So what was going on with that boss is it has a certain stun timer of like... So you hit the boss, and obviously it has some invincibility frames, but yeah, so you want to hit it right as it's becoming vulnerable again. And that's not a mash, you don't just mash the sword button. What you actually have to do is time it to a very specific timing. So that takes a bit of practice, but with a lot of bosses in this game, you can just stun lock them into that. So if you hit them at the right timing, they won't be able to move. For the last 2 bosses in the run though, that doesn't work. Actually, sort of like the last 3 bosses. And there's something else I should talk about. So just with like damage recovery in general, like after you've taken damage, you can just start walking through enemies and stuff, which is obviously very helpful. And as I talked about before, like you want to take damage from the enemies that don't deal much damage, because obviously dying is scary in this run. And you actually only have 10 lives, so every time I hit continue, I lose one of those 10 lives. So basically, there's only 10 lives, and in this run, there is 8 intentional resets that you do, and a reset takes a life. So I can only die twice unintentionally, and if I die more than that, then it's run over. You lose all your progress, basically. This game doesn't save, so I'm gonna try not to die unintentionally. Yeah, so a little something about, I guess, how damage works in this game. If you're jumping and you're about to land and you take damage, you'll get this weird glitch where you actually don't take damage. So you get hit by the enemy and you get the knockback, but I just realized I forgot to do the pause glitch there. You get hit by the enemy and you get the knockback, but you don't like take the actual damage. So that's good. It helps me conserve my health, but it gets even better. It turns out when you have that glitch where you don't take the damage, if you start jumping, your speed will actually be unbounded. Like, you can just start building up more and more and more speed. Unfortunately, these jumps are actually frame perfect, so we may not even see that glitch at all in this run. But if we do, it'll be, I'll jump, I'll get hit right before I land on the ground, and then I'll start doing these frame perfect jumps. Once again, that's 1/60th of a second to time these jumps. And if I can get that, then I'll start building up crazy amounts of speed and just go through the whole map really quickly. I'm hoping to show some of that off in this run, and the tool-assisted speedrun does that heaps, but yeah, it's very difficult, so we'll see. Now this boss here, I can't hit him up there now because he's all the way up there, and I need to get him with my bow. But in his next time that he opens his cloak, he's going to be down. And it took us ages to figure out how to actually hit this guy. So, turns out you have to hit the front of his mirror, like the glass part of his mirror. And I felt really stupid because it took me really long to figure that out. And I was like, well, why wasn't I killing him? But that was why. Alright, so that's that boss done, the second boss, and we're just going to do another demo glitch. So I'm waiting for the demo to play here, and I was up in the top left corner of that map. This is going to warp me down to the bottom left corner and save heaps of time. After I beat that boss, I could have got an upgrade to my bow, so it would have become twice as powerful. but that's a little bit slower than just going through with these weak weapons. So by the time I get to the end of this run, normally the sword and the bow have 3 levels, and I'm on level 1 now. I'm only going to get to level 2 sword by the end of the run, and I'm still going to be on level 1 bow. So there are some optional bosses to get you a really strong sword, but I'm not going to do that because they're slow. There's a bit more that I'll cover, but just while we're walking through this familiar scenery, do we have any donations or anything you'd like to read out?
We have a $5.61 from Crazy Jess that says, "Hey 8-bit, good luck on the run. When's the test?"
Thanks, Jesse. Alright, so this one that I'm going through now is actually probably the scariest part of the run in terms of health. I very likely will die on the way to this next town that I'm going to, because it's the longest stretch of the game without a town. The good thing about towns is if you talk to the people in the towns, they'll heal you just like a little bit of health. And often you need to talk to these people to make progress in the game. So turns out that you can basically think of every town as a health restoration point. So yeah, also the way that talking to people in this game works a bit weirdly. So basically, different people can say different things. So you talk to this person, they'll say one thing. You talk to them again, they'll say a different thing. And it turns out that the game just tracks how many times you've just talked to a person. And every time that hits 7 times, it rolls over. So there's basically 7 unique messages, but for most people, a lot of them are duplicates, so they'll only say like 2 or 3 actual things. But the thing that makes this weird is you actually need to get certain text boxes from certain people to make progress through the story. So in this town coming up, oh, there was 2 frame perfect jumps there. So that was the glitch I was talking about before as well with the damage. Thank you. Yeah, in this town coming up, this dude's gonna tell us his daughter was taken by pirates or whatever. Oh, alright. As you can see, the health routing is very tight there. So yeah, not this town, but the next town, he's going to tell us his daughter was taken. And basically, if you don't get that message, then the place where the pirate is at doesn't even exist. So I'm just going to restore my health. I don't actually need to talk to this guy, but this will get me through to the next town. And on the next town, you can basically walk off the right side of the screen. But only after that dude has said that thing about his daughter going missing. So, yeah, this game's pretty weird. And I actually have like a really funny story about this, is that my parents actually played this game when they were probably my age, and they gave it to me and my brother. And they thought that the game was broken because you had to talk to this guy like 7 times to get him to open up a bit of the story. So we'll see how long this takes. Are there no brave men? Are there no brave men? Are there no brave men? My daughter has been taken. So, yeah. You really have to know that you just have to talk to everyone 7 or 8 times. Otherwise, you have no hope of getting through this game. Yeah, coming up is the 3rd boss, which is the pirate. So, this pirate's I'm gonna stun lock him, and that's gonna basically be the last boss I can stun lock. So with stun locking, it's very, very tight timing, and I'm not sure if it's frame perfect, but it's definitely only a few frames window you get to do your sword. And if it goes wrong, the boss will kill me, so I gotta be very careful with that. And I'm resetting now to actually do a big glitch. So I've reset to the map before the pirate was at. Now, what's supposed to happen when you beat that pirate is you go into that cave that was there, and then there's this princess, which is the daughter of that dude from before. And she's like, oh wow, thanks for saving me, I really appreciate it. But now, if I go back to this map after having reset, she's just not there. So, like, that seems really slow, what I did there, like going all the way back. But it turns out to have this really weird side effect, because she's not only not there, but like, the game still thinks that I haven't saved her. So normally after you save her, when you go back to that town from before, she's there instead of her dad, saying like, oh, thanks. But now the dad's there, but he says, thanks for saving me, as if he was the princess. But it has a really weird side effect. This guy's telling me to do 5 duels. It just completely skips this first duel. You saw the screen flash there, but like, yeah, for some reason saving the princess has something to do with that first duel. So this is actually duel 2 out of 5. And I died there. That's one of my unintentional deaths, but that's fine. So we'll go again, and the glitch still works, skipping duel 1. So yeah, as you saw the screen flash there before duel 1, that was like supposed to be duel 1. I actually don't remember what duel 1 is, because I've been running this with the skip for so long. Yeah, this is always quite a tense part of the run, doing these duels. Each one restores your health just a little bit, but still, it's just a bit, still quite difficult. Alright, this duel is weird. I might get this massive lag spike, and we'll see if it happens. There it is. So the corner of the screen gets all garbled, and the game just lags like crazy. And I'm actually hoping that I can trigger that again, because there's something I really want to say about it. It just seems to happen sometimes. I haven't been getting it recently, but it definitely has happened a lot in practice. I didn't get it, but you could see there that basically the corner was getting garbled and the game slowed down to like half speed. Now there's a funny thing about that lag spike. So in the instruction manual, it says, oh, in Duel 4, the game might go into this super cool slowdown mode, and you get to really be in with the action. But what they really meant is the game lags, we couldn't fix it, so we're going to pretend it's a feature. That's the 5 duels. And right now I'm in the top right corner of the map. I don't want to be there, so I'm going to do another demo glitch. Right down to where I need to be. So this demo glitch saves an insane amount of time here. I'm walking through the same route again, so if we do have any more donations or things you'd like to read, now's a good time. No worries. Yeah, so one thing, one person I should give a massive shout out to. So as I mentioned before, there's barely anyone I know that knows this game exists, and the only other person really is like people in my family, like my brother. My brother, Isotage, as he's known by his screen name, actually did a tool-assisted speedrun of this game. If you haven't seen it, I would highly recommend watching the tool-assisted speedrun, or TAS, of this game. For reference, my run is 33 minutes. That's like my PB and world record in this game. The TAS is 13 minutes. So yeah, saving 20 minutes over me. And the reason for that is, like, as we saw before with those crazy, really fast jumps, the TAS just does that everywhere because it can nail frame-perfect jumps. So yeah, basically what happened is I had played this game a lot casually. And Isotage, my brother, was interested in TASing this game. And so we sort of got together and said, alright, well, let's figure this out. So basically, I figured out for him what you actually have to do casually to beat the game. So exactly which bosses were optional, exactly which people you had to talk to, how many times, what you didn't have to do, what you did have to do. And then he figured out basically all the glitches. So Isotage figured out pretty much every glitch you're seeing in this run. The demo glitch, the pause glitches, the jump chaining, all of that stuff he figured out making his TASes. He made one TAS quite a few years ago, and then recently, I think last year, he optimized that TAS further. Now that, yeah, that's down to a 13 something, and my run is a 33 something, so TAS is crazy for this game. I would recommend it. And yeah, so that was really fun, and we had a lot of fun growing up playing this game on like the emulators. We would figure out where all the stuff was stored and reverse engineer it. Because, I mean, we couldn't beat this game as kids. We didn't know you had to talk to this person 7 times or whatever. The bosses were really hard. It's just a brutal game, especially when you only get 10 continues. So, basically, the first time I finished this game was when I was sort of pulling it apart and figuring out how it worked. So, yeah, I had a lot of fun with him, and he did an amazing job finding all the glitches in this game and just everything about it, pretty much. And for reference, if you're familiar with Tazzing, that Taz had 150,000 re-records, so it's definitely pretty optimized. One thing I've glossed over when I was talking about that is this path right here. I was actually supposed to mention it. You might have noticed as I walked into that town, that path wasn't there. But then I talked to that dude and he said, hey, there's a path from here to Amon. And that's when the path appeared. So, yeah. You have to talk to certain people to make certain things appear. And that's what's so confusing about this game casually. And you don't even just have to talk to this dude who was in Farazon there. You have to talk to another guy in Amon. So, like, basically I had to talk to that wizard, like, 4 or 5 times for that message to come up. And then I had to talk to this dude 4 or 5 times for that message to come up. For the compulsory path to beat the game to come up. So if you thought those NES games were cryptic, then, well, you haven't seen anything until you've seen Lord of the Sword. So basically I'm coming in here, this place that I'm going is like, to the boss called Dark Suma. It's the second to last boss, so I'm never sure what all the bosses are called in this game, and like what it actually tells you to do in the instruction manual and on the title screeny thing is really vague. But yeah, so this is sort of the second to last boss. I'm resetting there just to restore my health. It's quicker than dying to restore your health. But you can skip that wall there just by jumping up through it, and then we're just going to jump over here. Some very precise jumps, but we're going to make it through this dungeon pretty quickly. These eyeballs do a ton of damage, so I really don't want to get hit by them. And if you know your way through this maze, like I'm already at Dark Suma. So there's these skulls here, and they're like, I need to get rid of all of them before he comes up. But I'm actually going to leave one skull. Hopefully, if I can get it right. Yep, okay. Now, I can just jump up and hit him. So if I kill all the skulls, Dark Suma is going to come down and, like, be really hard to kill, because he'll be, like, shooting me and stuff. But right now, he's just chilling up there, and I can still hit him. And this skull's just going in this predictable pattern. So, if he would actually be nice and come to the left side of the screen, I could beat him pretty quickly. So this is actually, like, probably the worst Dark Suma fight I've had, just because of his RNG with his movements. But this is basically what it's supposed to look like. Like, I just keep him to the left and keep that skull to the right, and he's the fight pretty much. Oh, alright, so this is what he looks like if he actually fights you. Luckily I've done enough damage to him leading up to this that I'm comfortable fighting him here. But yeah, as you can see, I'm just taking a whole heap of damage. So fighting him normally this way is not very good. And you can actually get Sword 3, so I'm on Sword 1 now, so I'm doing barely any damage to him. You can get Sword 3 before this fight. And the funny thing is, this boss actually drops Sword 2. So if you have Sword 3, and you beat this boss and you pick up the sword, your sword will actually get weaker. So yeah, you don't want that. And there's no labeling on the sword. It's just like an item on the ground, which is a sword in a green box. So I'm gonna be very careful here. Yeah, no. That's alright. That was a bit of a shame that I died there, but really I got to show you how unforgiving this game can be, I guess. One other thing that I haven't mentioned about this game is the jump is actually on the up button. It's one of those games. Because if you think about it, the Master System controller only had, like, the D-pad and 2 buttons, and you have a sword and bow, so what else are they going to do? But, yeah, so jump is on the up button, so any precise platforming is basically out the window. And that includes any hope of doing those frame-perfect jumps I was talking about earlier. It'd be hard enough with a button, let alone having to like anchor your finger over to the diagonal. This fight's going much better here. And of course I jinxed it. Also what can happen, so I have sword 1 and this boss drops sword 2, so I do want the sword from this boss. But if you beat him on the right side of the screen, his sword can drop in, like, basically in the map transition. So if it drops there, and you try and collect the sword, you would just go through to the other map and not collect the sword. So then you're stuck on a 1-level sword for the rest of the run, unless you get that really difficult 3 sword, which takes ages to get. But yeah, so that's another reason I want to beat him on the left side of the screen and why I'm using this skull strat here. I can kind of chain him in swords without doing this, but that's like very difficult. So he drops that sword. And I'm just gonna reset. I'll start again in here, and we're basically going back to Farazon, which is that town that I was at before. So yeah, as I was talking about before with the jump chaining, there's a few places I'm going to try that in the run, but don't hold your breath, they're frame perfect jumps. Yeah, so pretty much something I should emphasize is just like how cryptic this game is. The items that I have up in the top don't really mean much. I had that book before that apparently I needed and I don't need, and you know, all the actual objectives that it gives you for like, here's how to beat the game, are just hopeless. I don't know if the Japanese translation is any better, but yeah. And I suppose a little bit about this game in an RTA sense, like, because as I said, Isotage did the Taz, I think before I ever ran an RTA. And I am currently the only runner who runs this game, so I would be very happy if someone else wanted to pick it up and wanted to submit a time to the leaderboards. Currently I have that 33:13, I think it is, and I actually only got that the other night. Before this marathon, I had about a 45-minute time, so the estimate there might be a little bit high, but we'll see. There's this random crash that can happen. I'm past that point now, but yeah. Because this game doesn't save and it's prone to crashing sometimes, it's quite risky to run in a marathon, actually. Yeah, so this is another chain of really complicated things. That dude's telling me to go to Shagart. That dude's telling me that Shagart is dodgy, and to go to Linden to talk to the daughter of that guy so that she can tell me Shagart is dodgy, and that opens up a path to get to Shagart. But if you go to Shagart before then, which you can do, you can't, like, Shagart's where the final boss is, you can't finish the game. But, yeah, you have to talk to all these people, and they're like, you can imagine, like, I'm playing through this game as a speedrunner, and I'm taking, like, 8 continues out of 10, as planned. And you only get 10, so you can imagine if you're playing through this casually, not dying 10 times is really quite difficult. Yeah, so that spider can give me a jump chain. Oh, there was one jump in a jump chain. So yeah, that jump there was frame perfect, and you could do it. I don't really need to talk to this wizard here, but I'm on really low health, and that I gotta get to this town called Amon to the town called Linden, and as I did before, that trek is really brutal because you have to go through, like, I think 5 or 6 routes without any health restoration. So I'm gonna get my full health back, and as you can see, it was going up there little bit by little bit. So yeah, you have to kill a little bit of time to talk to these people, but it's definitely worth it. So, yeah, once again, while I'm walking to this town, if you have anything to read out, go ahead. Why are those guys disappearing? Thanks, Craig. Yeah, alright, so... I don't know. This game's weird. Those guys are the guys that steal your book, and... they're supposed to be really intimidating. If you actually try and slow down on those maps and fight those guys, then... it's... yeah, really weird, but, it gets really difficult if you try and fight them. So... but if you just walk past them, they, like, never hit you, so... I don't know. I think that's just what type of enemy they are. Actually, now, like, if I'm walking here, if anyone does have any questions about the run or the game in general, then... or speedrunning, or me, or life advice, I don't know. I'm happy to answer them. Or in Twitch chat. Alright, so that dude was telling me about the Beast of Mount Morgos, and I actually remember cheesing that boss as a kid. I don't remember how I did it though, so I wish I could like figure out how to cheese it again. That boss is the one that gives you the extra sword, so I don't actually have to do that. But yeah, and you need, that's why you need the book for that boss and that sword. Yeah. Another thing I'm noting about this game is like the Japanese version. I briefly mentioned before what's different, but on a Japanese Master System, you can't actually reset. So you saw, like, every time I want to do that demo glitch, I'm just smashing the reset button and it takes me back to the title screen. But if you don't have that, then you have to, like, die. And that takes you back to the title screen. Oh, that was the dude that was actually the princess, but was the dude as well, by the way, there. So yeah, on a Japanese version, you have to die. And me and Isotage, like, sat down and spent ages, like, timing the Japanese version against the US or international version, and like I'm pretty sure he almost went in TAS both of those, but it does turn out that this version is a little bit faster, just because like the Japanese version is better because I mean you would rather go back to your last town than back to just that random town at the start of the game, because more often than not going back to the start of the game still does put you a little bit out of the way, but basically, yeah, the problem with the Japanese version is you have to die every time you want to reset. This game can actually be like quite brutal to run because you need a console that has a working reset and pause button, because there's glitches that you reset and pause for. So you don't need a console, but yeah, it certainly helps you get an optimal time. So for that reason, like if you're picking up this game, I would recommend just doing it on emulator, because it's just such a headache getting your console sorted. And if you're an Australian thinking about picking up this game, you have the whole problem of running it on NTSC as well. It's just for reference, like NTSC being like the US or Japanese consoles, they run at 60 frames a second, so, and Australian run at 50 just due to the electrical system. So in newer games it doesn't matter too much, but in older games, yeah, it really actually slows you down. Pause glitch here skips like all the dungeon, by the way, just casually. So like I'm at the boss now. But yeah, so the Australian version of this game will literally just run slower than the American version, so... I'm actually not very happy about like my health situation here. I should have actually come in with a bit more health, but what can you do, really? No good way to restore your health before this point. Oh, man. Oh Wait, this is the last boss, by the way. What I'm doing basically is to arrow him to put up his shield and then like sword him when he brings it down. If I play this super safe, I should not be able to die, but it's also going to be slow. What I probably should have done is just like died and then use that death to restore my health, but too late to do that now. So this is why it's actually really important to get that double strength sword, because if I didn't pick that up, then this boss would take twice as long, and as you can tell, it's already a really long boss. So in a practice run that I was doing over there just before, I actually missed that double strength sword. And I could barely even beat this guy. It just like took that long that I was taking so many hits. So I was really, really lucky that that sword didn't drop in that awkward spot from before. So fun fact about this guy as well is, like, when you beat him as well, me and Isotage figured out he sets every flag in the game. So even though we never beat... there we go. One more demo glitch, and you actually have to walk to the castle at the end of the game to beat the game. So time's in like 2 minutes time, basically, and yeah, that'll be the end. But yeah, as I was saying with that final boss, he actually sets every flag in the game. So even though I haven't beaten all those... Well, there's 2 optional bosses in the game that I haven't beat. And like, there are some people that I haven't talked to, some places that I haven't been. Technically, right now, this file is 100%ed because that boss just sets every flag in the game. So technically, there's like any percent is 100% for this game. But I think if I was gonna have another category that was 100%, I would actually beat all the bosses. But yeah, I don't really have a lot of interest in running that category. And like, yeah. So because like I have the only run, I moderate the leaderboards for this. So I mean, I could just add it if I wanted, but any percent is generally a lot more rewarding in this game. Because it's brutal enough rather than having to do those extra bosses in 100%. So if there are any last questions or donations or anything like that in the walk, I can answer them or read them. Teresa, I think you're in the audience anyway. Yeah, so Isotage actually very recently, I think he put a disassembly up here on GitHub, so you might even be able to find that. He started disassembling this game, but yeah. Time will be when I go into this castle here. Oh no, not when I go in, but when I clear this text box. So I'll say like 3, 2, 1, time. Thank you. Yeah, this game is like weird, but it's really nostalgic and it's really quite fun once you get into it. So, you know, if you have a Master System or a Master System emulator, I'd recommend checking it out. And if you're really game, try speedrunning it. I'd love to have some competition on the leaderboards. Yeah, so thanks AFCON for having me. Be sure to keep supporting the cause, and I look forward to the other runs coming up.